Viewer discretion is advised. In the United States, the illegal drug trade is estimated to be a $100 billion a year industry. From the drug dealers, to the drug addicts, to law enforcement officials who try to put a stop to it, we take you inside the American drug game. Another one of the cities I supply drugs to is Atlantic City, New Jersey. Atlantic City is a tourist destination, so my customers are very different from my cities where the customers live in the city all year round. People come to Atlantic City to gamble and to have a good time. I mean, that's what the city's about. And to some people, having a good time includes getting high, and that's where I come in. I have my locals who work for me, who keep me up to date on anything going on, any shows or concerts coming into town. You'll get different types of customers for the different types of shows that come into town. For example, a rock concert is going to have a completely different type of customer than a hip-hop concert will. I only deal with my regular customers in Atlantic City, and then I have my local crew. They handle new customers, bringing in more clientele. Besides the concerts that come into town, you have your regular gamblers, your weekenders, who come just to gamble and have a good time. They'll make appointments with me before they go to Atlantic City so that everything is set up when they come into town. They want to make sure they have their drugs for the weekend. They want to make sure everything is on par and everything is exactly where it needs to be when it needs to be. My customers who are the hardcore gamblers, they like the pills and the coke. They like it because it keeps them awake for long periods of time. They feel like the longer that they can play, the better chance they have of winning. Aside from the situations we have set up, sometimes my hardcore gambler customers, they'll call me when they need more drugs, whether they had a big win or if they had a big loss. If they win big, they often want one type of drug, and if they lose, they often want another type of drug. It all depends on what type of night they're having. I prefer when they win, because when they win, they always buy a lot more product. When they win big, they tend to have more people around them. There'll be a lot of people with them, a lot of people partying with them in their hotel rooms. And when you have more people around, it means you're going to need more drugs. I hate when they call because they need more drugs because they had a big loss. I usually show up to their hotel room and they'll be by themselves and all pissed off because they had a bad night. And then because they had a bad night, they'll want me to cut them a deal or give them a special price because they lost money. That's not the way it works. I don't give a damn about you losing money. I want you to buy my drugs. When they win, they don't care about the price. They'll even sometimes give me a tip. I think giving me a tip is just kind of, sometimes it's their way of showing off when they have all these hookers and scumbags around. The type of people that only come around when you win. These are the type of people that never come around when you lose. You have to understand, these people aren't the smartest people you've ever met. I mean, if they were that smart, they wouldn't be buying drugs in the first place. A normal run-through in Atlantic City, it's usually a pre-arranged meeting where I'll meet with my client either in their hotel room or maybe even a restaurant. You have to be extra careful in the casinos, because these casinos, they have cameras everywhere. If the casino security, they see you on camera doing something that they think is illegal, they won't hesitate to call the cops. That's why my job is to blend in with everybody else and make it look like I'm just another gambler on the casino floor. The thing about Atlantic City is that everybody comes there either to spend money or to make money or a little bit of both. Everyone in Atlantic City is looking for quick cash. So aside from my regular crew, I also have some people that I hire to be my lookouts. For example, if a high roller comes to town and is looking to buy drugs, a lot of times these people, these high rollers who come in from out of town, if they don't already have a connection with somebody to get their drugs, a lot of times they'll ask people who work at the casinos, a bellhop or a doorman, maybe a hooker, somebody working at a restaurant. They'll go to these people and they'll ask them where they can get a good deal on drugs, and these are the people that I have working for me aside from my local crew. So these people will call me up and let me know they have somebody who's looking to buy, and for looking out for me, they'll get a piece of it as well. Sometimes they want money, sometimes they just want drugs. Now, my regular clientele, they'll have things set up in advance, sometimes weeks in advance, before they come to Atlantic City, so that everything's all set up and they'll have their drugs when they're ready to party. Things work a lot smoother that way when you have things set up in advance. Everything's put together nice and smooth, and usually works without any problems. And I don't like problems. I don't want to have any type of problems, any mess ups. I don't want to have any situations with the cops, none of that. So the easier we can make it, the better it is for everybody. I prefer setting things up in advance. It's a lot safer that way. It's a way to not get caught, not get tracked by the police. But if a last minute deal happens, then it happens. If they're paying, we'll find a way to make it work. Sometimes things can get out of control. I've had customers of mine who've won big in the casinos, and they won a lot of money and got out of control. There's times that they'll call me up even after we've already made the deal, because they've won so big and they want to party all night long and they need more drugs because they have more people around them, and so we'll have to make that happen. Like I said, if they're paying, I'm going to find a way to make it work, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to the money. I've had some customers of mine who call me for a second time because I won big. They get blasted out of their mind. They go back down into the casino and then lose all their damn money. Or they'll have the wrong people around and they'll end up getting robbed by some hooker or her pimp.
I worked on an anti-crime task force that was assigned to Atlantic City one summer. I did some undercover work where I would attempt to buy drugs. And then there were times where we would reverse the operation and I would pose as the drug dealer trying to make sales. The local dealers are a little easier to catch. The dealers who are just passing through town, or the ones that only come to town for certain events that come to the city, those are the ones that are a little more hard to catch. Your regular weekenders who come to Atlantic City for the weekend to have a good time to gamble, they usually will use the same dealers every time they come to the city. That way they know exactly who they're dealing with and they know exactly what type of product they're going to get. They will tend to use these people time and time again. The people that don't come to town on a regular basis. Those are the ones who will buy from just about anyone. Those were the customers that we could convince that we were drug dealers. Those are the people that are only in town for one night and will buy from anyone. They're just looking to get some drugs quick and fast. We would end up arresting people that you would never expect to be buying drugs. Lawyers, doctors, teachers, people that you wouldn't think of would be out buying drugs. But when people come to Atlantic City, they come and they tend to do things that they wouldn't normally do on a regular basis. Or maybe they are just doing things that they're better at hiding in their regular everyday life. But sometimes people come here and they show their true colors, and they're all wrapped up in the action in Atlantic City. They'll come into town to party and have a good time. They'll make bad decisions, and these bad decisions sometimes end up ruining their whole life. One weekend of bad decisions in Atlantic City could end up ruining your whole life.
I was a former casino worker for many years. I was assigned to work in the high roller area of the casino when I was working there. I once had a guy who won really big at the table that I was working at. It was one of the biggest payouts I had ever had working at the casino. He invited me to come up to his hotel suite after my shift for a party that he was having. I wasn't really supposed to be hanging out with the hotel guests, but I thought this would be an opportunity to hang out with a high roller and be at a party where I'm sure there was going to be a lot of good entertainment. I went to the party in the hotel suite, and they had everything that you could think of, whether it was food, drinks, drugs, or women. They had it all. I had a little bit of everything that night, and I wanted more of it. I started to party a lot more than I should have, and I would try to make friends with a lot of these high rollers so that I could get invited to these type of parties. So that I could be around these type of people and be involved in the things that they were involved in. I knew that these people were not my friends, that they didn't care about me, but I kind of felt important being around these type of people and having access to all these type of things that they had access to. I started partying so much with these people that eventually the casino caught on to what I was doing. They noticed how I was in the hotel after my shift was over, and I was in places where I wouldn't normally have been if I hadn't been invited to these parties. I eventually got reprimanded for it, for hanging out with the hotel guests, but I still wanted to continue doing it, and I thought that I could still do it and get away with it and not get caught. I really enjoyed going to these type of parties, and I wanted to continue going. So I continued going to these parties even though I was told not to by my employer, because I wanted to be around these type of people and be at these parties. I guess I was thinking that it wasn't that big a deal that I wouldn't get caught for the second time. However, I was caught again, and my employer made me take a drug test. Needless to say, I failed the drug test, and I was fired from my job. I was so depressed about losing my job that I turned to drugs even more than I had when I was at these parties. My life spun out of control after that. I was using drugs all the time. I couldn't control myself. I didn't know what to do. I went from just going to these parties and partaking in the things that they had to offer to actually being a full-blown drug addict. I was doing things that I'm not proud of, but I had to do what I had to do to continue feeding my habit. Eventually, I got clean and got back on the right track. But I think back to that first party I went to when I was working at the casino, when that high roller had that big win that night. I think about that party and the things that were at that party, things that I was involved in, and I realized that was the beginning of my life falling apart. If you're not careful, these things will take control of your life very quickly. There's a lot of temptation out there, and when you fall into it, it's hard to get out. The truth is, I should have never been going to those parties. I should have never gotten involved in any of the drugs or any of the parties. I should have just did my job and did what I had to do and clocked out at the end of the night and went home. But the temptation was there and I fell for it. You have to know your limit, and you have to play it cool. You can't get crazy wasted and then think something bad isn't going to happen, especially when you have a lot of cash on you. And when you get crazy and out of control, that's what brings cops around. And that's what we don't want. Just do your thing, have fun, buy my product, and don't get out of control. Because you want to be able to come back to Atlantic City, to the Atlantic City playground as they call it. And if you're constantly getting out of control and getting wild, you're going to have problems. You want to be able to come back and have a good time. But if you get stupid and the cops get called and you draw that type of tension, the party's over.